Fortnite OG is here, and a lot has changed in terms of the way that competitive works, more specifically zones and of course storm surge, because there hasn't been a lot of moving zones and things we've seen in the first 3 days of OG Fortnite, because games just don't get stacked enough. Nobody has enough heals. That's nothing to go there. So let's talk through what all the new zone changes are and go through what exactly you need to know for the tournaments running tomorrow, because there's a lot and it's better to be prepared than not prepared in these situations. So as of recording this right now, it's about 13 hours until the first build and zero build tournaments in terms for EU. Obviously, there's going to be Asia tournaments as well, starting out at 4 a.m. my time. I don't know what freak is waking up at that early, but, you know, good luck to you if you're on the 40-hour grind this weekend. I'm not sure if the changes that were made to zones actually apply to zero build. As far as I've known, I've actually asked Osarion on Twitter, who basically handles pretty much a lot of the data mining stuff for Fortnite competitive, and he told me essentially zones haven't really changed that much, and between pubs and ranked and tournaments as well. So I would assume that this is all applicable to actual zero build tournaments and build tournaments and the likes. So I'm going to run you through a quick scrim that I played today in squads with Vico, Moneymaker, and Feroxy. Obviously, because of the format of tournaments this season, it's not really much of a point to scrim, normal duo scrims and all that stuff. So that's what we're playing squads. But I want to go towards the mid game here, because it's very important to talk about what exact zone changes were made to Fortnite competitive. Now, so we're hopping on to this scrim that we played early on today, and this is actually 4th zone. So as zone is going to reveal, we're going to go into 5th zone right now, and this is going to be your first storm surge zone as far as that I've seen. Obviously, I think that the games are a little bit more stacked, but they're not going to be too applicable to you here, that you might have larger surges, but in this specific zone, this is 4th zone transitioning into 5th zone. I believe that the zones are 1 tick in this situation as well. So a big change in terms of the storm plays that you can make within the season, but obviously with a lack of health and resources that you can get in the map, probably any sort of storm plays are pretty much impossible, considering you don't get enough med kits or bandages in order to survive storm, especially in duos or in solos. And more specifically in squads here as well. So this is going to be 4th zone into 5th zone. Now, as we transition now from 5th zone going into 6th zone, this is where the major changes happens in terms of what zones actually look like. So I'm going to zoom in here, and what is that? So now, instead of that first moving zone, or that half and half being outside of the zone that you're typically used to, this zone is fully inside of this specific zone. So this is now 6th zone from the 5th zone, and you can see that it's basically entirely inside of the zone. And for the majority of people that have to rotate here, it's not that far of a rotate. It seems to be that the game seems a little bit easier from this mid game to the late game transition, because you don't have to really rotate too much as long as you're pretty much center in that 5th, 6th zone. In that 5th zone, you're going to put yourself in the center of 6th zone, similarly to some of the old ways. Like if you just got center of 3rd zone, you got 4th zone guaranteed. Well, if you get the center of 6th zone, then you get 7th zone guaranteed in this situation as well. And now with 10 more seconds left to go, this is where you're going to get your first move-in zone. So keep in mind, this is then going to be your 44 surge down to 40 surge in first move-in zone. And look at the distance in this moving zone. So apparently, as far as I know, it's about 160 meters from this zone straight to the edge of first moving zone. And as you can tell, this is a far rotate. It's a very, very far rotate. If you're looking at your minimap, if you're one of the teams, for example, over to the right side, it's not on your map anymore, right? Look at the bottom right here. This moving zone is out of your entire minimap. Usually, you'll be able to see it just on the edge, regardless of where you are inside of that half and half zone. But for this team, this thing is gone. You're going to have to open up your map and do a lot of work here in order to see where the hell the zone is going. But as you can see, really, really far zone. There's your first moving zone in this situation. But it's not really your first moving zone, and you're about to see why that's the case in a second here. So as first moving moves over towards that bottom left side, it's about 45 seconds for it to pull all the way towards the bottom left side. Now, with this 44 players alive, again, like I said, we're going to go from 44 surge down to 40 surge, and that's it. That is going to be your last storm surge of the game, because we don't have a 40 surge down to 30 surge anymore. Probably because of the way that these zones are set up. It's a bit... I think Epic was expecting players to try to fight in this next type of zone, and you'll see exactly what I mean now in a second. 4, 5, 3, 2, 1, and here is your second moving zone. But wait, it's not moving yet. As you see on the bottom right side of your screen, we still have about 30 seconds in total before the next moving zone moves. So essentially, What we now have is we have our first moving, which is super far away, and then goes 160 meters to that direction, and then the zone just stops. So we have a static zone now within the moving zones, and you have 30 seconds now of pure box fighting action that you can have between all the teams on your layer. This is one of the situations where stink bombs, for example, I believe are super crazy for massive refreshes. One of the most impactful probably items I've seen in scrims and watching it today were those stink bombs in order to get massive refreshes, just because the availability of loot and stuff is so scarce in the map that any sort of stink bomb that you have probably is going to end up eliminating a player on your layer. Or even if it doesn't eliminate the player, you're going to do so much damage to that person that, you know, they're not going to be carrying white health, they're not going to be carrying med kits, so you can just go W key them, eliminate them for a faster refresh in these static zones. So this is 30 seconds then of a static zone, and then the zone's going to end up moving again, super far, and another about 55-second rotate all the way towards that second part of second moving zones now. And again, as you saw, there was no surge popping up for 30 players left alive because 40 surge is your last surge, I believe, in competitive. Now, you're probably not going to get this many stat games in the skirmish tournaments tomorrow, or even in any tournaments in this season, other than maybe solo victory cups, just because the formats are kind of scuffed, right? You're going to have, I believe the formats for the OG skirmish tournaments this season are 10 points per win and 1 point per elimination, so you probably won't get a 40 moving zone, maybe at high elo, but probably just in solos that's going to be the case. But it's good to know regardless, perhaps if Epic changes or keeps it for the future. So with 1 more second left to go in this transition, boom, we have another static zone again. So now we have 2 static zones, aka zones that don't move within the moving zones. Again, there's a 30-second wait period after that first 30-second wait period, and then this is another opportunity for players to go W key, to get refreshes, to throw stink bombs, to box fight each other, and then we're going to go into the final 2 moving zones, and this is where the game ends. There's no more static zones, there's no more waiting periods, and you're going to go fully out towards the late game. So you got now your third moving zone, again another 50 seconds ish going into the third moving zone, again a super far distance, which is completely fine considering there's so much mobility this season. And then instant transition for a minute and a half into final moving zone. All similar sort of distances. I'm not sure if they're exactly 1-to-1 distances from each side here, but for what it seems like they seem pretty similar to each other, and they move equidistance pretty much throughout the entire time here. So the moving zones, as far as I know and if I've seen from data leakers, are going to be exactly the same equivalent in Fortnite competitive tournaments. In terms of the way that these things I feel like operate, I feel like it's going to be a bit of a weird one to get used to. Obviously with the lack of healing, you need to be super wary of stink bombing and players on your layer. I'd say in order for players to really utilize these moving zones in stacked end games this season, what you're looking at is looking to play on a layer with maybe just one team. You have to invest a little bit more mats to elevate or de-elevate yourself. With Rift that goes now, a lot of people are going to be gliding higher, so layers are going to be a lot more spread out, which essentially means that you're going to be a little bit more safe in that sense, as long as you put yourself and you're wary of the layer that you're on. But even if you're not on a layer on another team, stink bombs are going to be super prevalent. And as I saw in pro scrims today, the majority of people ended up just throwing stink bombs at unwary teams right near them, shooting them, spraying them, wasting their HP, and because the only healing that people are carrying are chug jugs and minis, well, those are super scarce, and nobody's going to be carrying mech kits and bandages anymore. So those stink bombs are going to be super effective in those late games or in the early game transition leading up to the stat moving zones. Now, is this a better change in terms of the way that zones move? I don't know. Realistically, it's just gonna be a month-long season, so having a little bit of change I feel like is nice, you know. OG Fortnite feels different, it feels fresh. Having different types of zones feels nice, it feels different. Honestly, not really too much to complain about, but it's something that you're gonna have to learn very quickly with the insane amount of tournaments running this season. I believe there's 12 different victory cups, 6 solos, 6 zero build. You have all of the skirmishes. There's a lot of third-party tournaments. There's a $200,000 French-only zero build tournament running. There's a $100,000 content creator tournament running. There's many third-party cups being hosted. So a lot of prizing and stuff to be met with, and you have to be prepared even if the games aren't going to be as stacked, because there's a lot to learn this season, even if it's just 1 month. And who knows, I have a feeling that OG Fortnite is probably going to be staying for a little bit longer than you might expect, considering I feel like Epic put a lot of effort into this season. Just for it to be removed in a month doesn't make much sense. So maybe you'll have to learn this a little bit longer if I had to take a wild guess here, but who knows. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.